Let's talk about the captain, Bruno Fernandes, now, away from the game. Well, actually, it includes the game yesterday because he did score. He was the reason why we got back into the game. And Joe, there's been a lot been said from Roy Keane, which on the overlap with and him and Ian Wright, that viral clip of Roy Keane
Mm.
basically just hammering Bruno, saying he's a pretender and not a good captain, etc., etc. And Ian Wright kind of defended him, and that led to a wider conversation. I'm sure you've spoken about it a lot on the paddock, but for you, Bruno Fernandes, discuss. Actually,
I
it's an
mean,
open question.
in terms of captain candidates at Man United, there's no other options. So I think that for me, that conversation is a bit of a non-starter. Really, I can't even imagine who you would pick as captain. Look at the longest serving players at United, which is typically one starting point. It's Marcus Rashford, who plays for Aston Villa. It's Luke Shaw, who plays for nobody. And it's Bruno Fernandes, who plays every single minute of every single game. There's not really much of a conversation there. When you look at the output and who plays the best for Man United, I can't even tell you, other than Onana, but like we said, if there was an option, he'd probably be on the bench at the minute. I can't even tell you who's basically deserves to start, let alone deserves to be captain. Bruno deserves to start and starts every single game. There's, I think that whether he should be the captain isn't even a conversation personally. Whether he's as good a captain as Roy Keane or the players that Roy Keane was sort of playing in and amongst, well, maybe he's not. But what do you want him to do? Build Roy Keane's and Steve Bruce's and Eric Cantona's from thin air? You can't do that. That's not the team he plays in. And if Roy Keane played in this team, I'm sure he'd struggle as well. He wouldn't be, trebles and Premier League titles 3 and 4 years. It would be basically where we are now, but maybe, I don't know, a couple of places higher and a few more red cards. I just think it's such a weird. I mean, I like Roy Keane. I think he's a very good pundit and obviously one of the best players that Man United have ever had. So there's no, conversation or argument there. But I think it was slightly misguided, and I feel like, he talks a lot about not really being a United fan and not particularly caring about Man United, but try telling him that when he's screaming at Ian Wright about whether he's the right captain for Manchester United. He clearly cares. And I think that it's a shame that Bruno Fernandes has to be the kind of the target of this sort of, well-timed, but I think wrongly placed rant from Roy Keane about how poor Manchester United are, when I think Bruno Fernandes is one of the only bright sparks at Manchester United and one of the only people actually who's even worthy of the comparisons of the likes of some of the players, the Michael Carricks or the Paul Scholes or the Roy Keanes. Bruno's the only player in this team that would even regularly start in a Sir Alex team, and I think he would, by the way. I think he would get games for most of Sir Alex Ferguson's team. Whether he'd be the star man like Roy Keane was, I'm not so sure. But no one else in this squad is starting week in, week out for that 2012 or 2013 Man United team or the 2010 United team. Bruno does, because you can get 15 goals, 15 assists. Not many of the midfielders in Sir Alex Ferguson's teams had 15 goals, 15 assists this season. So I feel a little bit bad for Bruno. He's trying to do it all himself. At times he's a little bit petulant and a little bit mardy, and we know all this. But again, he's the only real remote candidate for United captain. And I think that he's actually putting numbers up this season again, despite the fact that we're 15th. What is it, another 10 goal, 10 assist season from him? Come on. I just feel like we've had about 2 penalties in the last 5 years. I don't think that's what's doing it anymore. Yeah, I just think I like, obviously, the passion from Keane. I love hearing him talk, but I just think for me, I think he just got it wrong with that one. I think Bruno's not the guy to be going after in this team.
Yeah, Angelina, do you see it as, but where are we with Bruno though? Or do you agree with Joe? Because there was a lot of scrutiny from Roy Keane on him.
Mm.
But this is a player who continually turns out for United.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Joe. I mean, I think if we're being completely honest, Bruno Fernandes is a very good player for Man United, which is a team without a lot of elite performers. Um, would Bruno Fernandes be playing week in, week out for, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Liverpool? You can argue, I don't know, maybe some people think that he would be playing week in, week out. I don't think he necessarily would, but I don't think that's him. I'm not trying to say that he's a bad player in that sense. I think that he gets a lot of stick. I think we've spoken about it before. Roy Keane wants to moan about him as a captain and everything, and people don't like the petulance. We've had a lot of, a lot of bad PR around Man United at the minute. We've heard a lot of stories about him offering to pay for things for people, offering to try and help the women's team ensure that their families can be at Wembley for the FA Cup final, things like that. That speaks a lot for me. And at the end of the day, since he made his Premier League debut, 5 years ago, only Kevin De Bruyne and Mo Salah have created more goals. So imagine Bruno Fernandes with the right talent around him. Imagine with an Erling Haaland as his target man, or just better forwards in general, the kind of players that Liverpool have got, for example. I think that, Roy Keane would not be sat there being as critical. So I agree. I think that he's got it wrong on this one. I know we've had a lot of debates about pundits and their opinions and stuff like that. I just don't really get what's going to come out of that. What is Man United gaining from that? And I think Amram did a good job of defending him as well. So yeah, I get it. Maybe not a star player in the top teams in Europe, but I think for Man United, you cannot say this guy doesn't try. This guy works hard. He cares. He understands the assignment. And like I say, he's created a lot over the years for us.
And did again last night. We're staring down the depths of the barrel. Nobody else was going to score yesterday. There was nothing going on. We wasn't really creating. Flash of a pan. And actually, it's a really difficult chance, that goal. When you see it back, it's kind of bouncing twice. You look at one, the Liverpool one with Maguire. Crook, remember we spoke about that one where he blazed it over the bar near the end. Weaker foot, bouncing a couple of times. To guide that into the corner is actually a really good finish technically. Quickie, for you, we have to talk, because Ryan brought this up, didn't he, a few weeks. Angelina spoke about it there, and we sort of pushed back that day, didn't we? Listen, the legends are entitled to say, what they want to say. They come from a different era, and if we lose those standards, where are we really going? We have to have some level of standards. Is this what Ryan meant when he talks about, but sometimes they're going too far? Because this is counterproductive. It brought more negativity. All everyone was talking about now was Bruno Fernandes at a time where, the guy is trying to literally keep us in the league. Let's be real, keep us in the division. And then you've got one of our legends, our absolute legends, one of our best captains ever, sort of absolutely ripping him to shreds, calling him a pretender and a this and that. And I think that's really harsh. But is this what Ryan potentially meant by legends don't really help us now?
Yeah, I think so. But in Roy Keane's defence, I think he was a different kind of captain to Bruno Fernandes. So he's probably frustrated by the theatrics and the arm waving when things don't go for him. But I think you have to look deeper than that. As you say, his numbers speak for themselves. This is a guy really who's carried the team on his back for the last 4 or 5 years. And it wouldn't surprise me, actually, if Bruno Fernandes wanted to leave at the end of the season, because he should be playing in a better team, competing for bigger things than just trying to stay in the division and maybe sneaking through in the Europa League. And I think if he does go, and I wouldn't blame him, I think then people like Roy Keane would start to appreciate that actually he's far and away the best player in this team. It was easy for Roy Keane to look good. And listen, he was a great player, but he was surrounded by great players that would call his behaviour into account. When he first came into the team and he walked into a dressing room with the likes of Brian Robson and Eric Cantona and Mark Hughes and Brian McClare. Bruno doesn't have that. And I agree with Joe. If Roy Keane was in this team, then he probably wouldn't be the legendary player that he is. And also, yeah, I don't like the theatrics sometimes. I think that Liverpool game at Anfield is going to come back and haunt Bruno, and it'll always be there in the background as a stick to beat him with. But you look at how he does conduct himself, as Angelina's alluded to, the fact he was the one trying to get tickets for people for the FA Cup final for staff. I was there at Rude's first game in charge against Leicester. Took my lads and we waited at the players' entrance to see who would stop and maybe sign an autograph or two or pose for photos. The bulk of the United players just walked past with their heads bowed, maybe some let off a wave. Bruno Fernandes was pretty much one of the only ones who gave the kids his time. He was there for a good 45 minutes to an hour, signing autographs, posing for photos. That's a captain. I think he gets it. I think actually some of his behaviour is because he's hurting about how low standards have fallen at Old Trafford. So as I say, I would not be surprised and I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to get out of there, because he's probably wasting the best years of his career surrounded by crap.
Well, Ryan's already brought this topic up, and here's exactly what he's had to say about it, especially after Roy Keane has been going in on Bruno Fernandes.
Yes, cheers, Flex. I was on the Inside Devils panel just a few weeks ago, and we had that brilliant debate, a really fiery discussion at points about, do former Manchester United players turn pundits, add unnecessary pressure to the current crop of Man United players? I was very much of the opinion, yes, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do contribute to this negative aura surrounding United at the moment. They do pile onto the misery at times. Now, look, when it's warranted, when it's criticism, but that's, is constructive, that's fine. Even when it's born out of passion, that's absolutely no problem if it's warranted. But it was the frequent berating, the unnecessary rants that really got to me. And I feel subconsciously add to this negativity right now that we're experiencing. And I stand before you. I know largely you guys didn't mind them doing this, but I stand before you a few days after Roy Keane goes 2-footed on Bruno Fernandes. So there's no other words for it. In a top of the voice rant that he had, it lasted about 2 or 3 minutes about Bruno, about him as a player, about not closing players down, about his attitude, about his captain credentials, about the fact that away fans singing his name flabbergasted him. He couldn't fathom that they were singing Bruno's name. Now, I want to get your opinion on this, because for me, it was completely unwarranted. It was completely unnecessary, and he singled out the wrong player. Bruno Fernandes is not the guy that you go after. He's gone after the best signing, the only world-class signing that we've had post Sir Alex Ferguson. I don't get it. If not for Bruno Fernandes, who takes the corners? If not for Bruno Fernandes, who takes the free kicks? Who converts every single spot kick? He scored every single penalty that he's taken this season. If not for Bruno Fernandes, who turns up every single week? He's only missed 3 games through injury since his debut in 2019. And I've got some stats for you. Bruno has more goals and assists than Kevin De Bruyne since Bruno's debut. His average season rating hasn't dropped below a 7.5 since his debut in 2019. Points per player, he's only second to Mo Salah since his debut. Bruno's not the one. He's the only player since Sir Alex Ferguson who can grab Manchester United by the scruff of the neck and drag them through a game. If not for Bruno, Manchester United lose that game at Goodison 2-0. If not for that free kick, we go out within 90 minutes against Fulham. It's a bit of Bruno magic that makes it 1-1 and even gets us to penalties. Bruno's not the guy that you go after, in my opinion. So, guys, I wanted to get your opinion on that. And as far as Man United fans singing his name, what do you want? How can you take that away from United fans? They're singing about a player that they're watching give everything on that field. And with regards to captain credentials, I get it. There'll be debate about that. You guys are going to talk about that now. No doubt about it. He throws his hands in the air. However, who else? Who else would be captain for Manchester United right now, if not for Bruno? He's the one who stepped up and decided to put that armband on. And isn't that by its very definition what a captain should be? Stepping in when no one else can. For me, Bruno is not the guy that you go for.